Crap. I spilled water in my shirt. Please don't look at it. Thank you very much. Alright boys, how you going? Today we're talking about Metabolist Architecture. Now, I first learned about this movement, when I was in university. I think it was second year. We were doing a housing project, and one of the precedents that the lecturer showed us was this building. If you're a student or an architect, you probably know what it is. It's the Nakagin Capsule Tower by Kurokawa. Now, Metabolist architecture first came into light during the 1960s in Tokyo at the World Design Conference. A group of architects who called themselves the Metabolists presented their manifesto called the Proposal for a New Urbanism. There was a bunch of insanely bizarre designs during their presentation. At first glance, they kind of reminded me of buildings that I've seen in Space Runner. And Total Recall, all of these designs shared a common denominator, which is that they are designed to accommodate growth and regeneration. The Metabolists drew a direct analogy between metabolic development and the built environment. They regarded the city as a living organism with different metabolic cycles rather than a static entity. To understand why they went against the grain and designed something so unconventional to what was being built at that time, we gotta understand the context first. Now let's begin with the country's culture. In Japan, there are two main forms of religion, which is Shintoism and Buddhism. For Shintoism, it's about the appreciation of all living things, Mother Nature, and life in general. As for Buddhism, it's about the acceptance of impermanence, the renunciation of attachments, and the pursuit of enlightenment. I hope I didn't butcher that definition, being a Buddhist myself. I'm keeping it concise because it's not a video about religion, although I would argue that it's a spirituality rather than a religion. As followers of Buddhism, we try to integrate the teachings of the Dharma into our daily lives, so we try our best to let go of things that ultimately don't matter as much, such as, I don't know, material possessions, wealth, hatred, anger. I find it a very practical way of living, and so did the Metabolists. They believe that architecture should obey the laws of nature and adhere to the cycle of life and death. The concepts of their projects were based on separating building components with varying lifespan, and they designed it in a way that allowed for maximum adaptability and flexibility. This enables them to only replace those components when their expiration date is up. This way it contributes to the conservation of resources by prolonging the durability of the entire building. Shortly after the end of the Second World War, Japan underwent a massive economic boom that lasted several decades. Population in the major cities skyrocketed due to the influx of migrant workers looking to make a living and also returning soldiers from the war. Due to the complexity of land ownership rights, piecemeal rebuilding of the war-torn cities, illegal temporary dwelling constructions to house returning soldiers, 30-meter building height restriction that was enforced after the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923, it resulted in a chaotic and confused urban scene that desperately needed a makeover. Not to mention that to many Japanese people, the once popular form of the imperial crown roof now had unpleasant nationalist and militarist overtones in a new democratic and international climate. As a result, Japanese architects during that period reinvestigated Japan's cultural heritage in search of new architectural representations of the country. And for Metabolist architects, the best way of going about solving the urban crisis was by redefining the way we design buildings. First one up, we have Kisho Kurokawa, and he's well known for his work on capsule architecture. He believed that people will gradually lose their desire for possessions such as houses, clothes, and cars, and will begin to value freedom and mobility. And he tied this together with the Japanese philosophy of ephemerality and impermanence, and put those into his capsule architecture design. Now, the term capsule here does not necessarily mean a house or a place of dwelling. It means, in this context, the tool that we use to perform tasks, and also the space in which the task is performed in. For example, a car is a capsule. You use it to get from point A to point B, and for a lot of people, a chunk of their time is spent in that car. So the car is not just a means of transport, but it is also an interior space that has its own architectural meaning. So to start off his research, Kurokawa was working towards separating all the different spaces in a place of dwelling into specific capsules with its own function. He carried out this experiment on a prefabricated apartment house that he designed in 1962. Each apartment unit is entered through an open staircase. The master unit is placed in the center of the dwelling, and smaller servant units attached to the sides of the master unit. Here, the master unit acts as the main living space, and the servant units serve as the kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom. The concept was based on the principle that architecture should change with time and be replaceable and interchangeable. Kurokawa understood that there was a disparity between the lifespan of certain components that makes up a building or a structure. For example, a kitchen or a bathroom unit is gonna wear out quicker and requires more maintenance than, let's say, a bedroom. On the other hand, socioeconomic changes of the inhabitants, such as increasing household size or reducing economic strength, could influence the way that the dwelling is being used. That is why the master unit is placed in the center to act as a joint for the servant units that can be attached and detached from the exterior. This allows for periodic renewal of the servant units and lengthening the lifespan of the entire building. This is how Kurokawa and the Metabolist drew a direct analogy between architecture and the metabolic cycle. However, this project was never realized, and I think part of the reason why was because it was difficult to understand. Designers need to realize that humans in general fear change and the unknown. There's something called the law of inertia that is inherent within us that stops us from taking that leap of faith. In 1970, Japan held the World Exposition Fair in Osaka. It was the perfect opportunity for the Metabolists to showcase their ideologies to an international crowd. Kurokawa designed a pavilion called the Takara Beautillion. It's designed for a cosmetics company exhibiting their beauty products. The structural framework is made up of a single prefabricated framing unit, which is repeated 200 times. Each unit is made up of 12 blunt right-angled bends of steel pipe welded to 6 arms, each consisting of 4 pipes grouped in a square. The end of each arm is welded to a flat circular disc that will be bolted together with the arm of another unit. Cubic capsules clad in stainless steel are then inserted into the framework. Here are some images of what the interiors look like and a cross-section of the interior structure. On the ground level, the arms of the framing units are bolted to concrete foundation piers, and the pavilion was put together on site in only 6 days. Due to structural limitations, the prefab framing units can only be stacked up to 4 stories high. There are some extra units towards the top and some cantilevered from the sides to reinforce the Metabolist concept of expandability and growth. However, service pipes and ducts cannot be accommodated in the trim frame system. So what do I think about this building? I think it looks like a living organism growing out its limbs, which I guess is a compliment to the Metabolist. You guys ever seen the movie Life by Jake Gyllenhaal? There's this alien, kind of look like that. So yeah, visually and experientially it's very interesting, but practically I kind of need more convincing. I understand that it's an experimental design for a temporary visitor experience, but if you want to convince people that this is the way forward, this is how we should be designing for the future, then you gotta be able to accommodate the basic services of a building, such as hot water pipes and discharge pipes. 2 years after the expo, he designed the Nakagin Capsule Tower to prove that Metabolist architecture could have a place in the urban environment. This is not a regular apartment building. It's designed for businessmen, people coming from overseas or outstationed and needs a place to crash temporarily. Also for the office workers in Japan, due to the work-life culture, you can have a quick nap. Some of the occupants of the capsules are designers and artists who use them as studios. In terms of structure, there are 2 major elements. There's 2 reinforced concrete shafts containing an elevator, a stairwell, and basic services. One is 11 stories and the other 13 stories high. They are left unfinished at the top, suggesting the possibility of future expansion. They measure up to 2.5 by 4 meters. Each capsule is attached to the shaft by 4 high-tension bolts and is independently cantilevered from the shaft so that any capsule may be easily removed without affecting the others. The interior of the capsules are furnished at the factory with a bathroom unit, built-in storage, furniture, and electrical appliances. There's a pipe rack in each capsule for water, hot water, cold water, and drains, and they're connected to the plumbing units in a concrete shaft with flexible tubes. So yeah, this design definitely addresses the functional aspect that I was talking about earlier, but the durability and longevity needs to be re-examined. For one, there's a lot of water leakage and draining issues. The capsules could have been sealed better where the unit meets the concrete shaft. A ton of rain has been seeping in through the cracks, damaging the interiors, and it isn't clear if the roof of the capsules are designed with a drainage system. A capsule without which what is contained in it is meaningless. So out of the 144 capsules, none of them had gone through a process of self-renewal like Kurokawa had hoped, because there had been no demand for it. Currently, only 20 of these capsules are being used, and 40 of those are being used as offices, I think, and everyone else moved out because the basic services went bust a while ago and there's no hot water. And Kurokawa passed away in 2007, so the master isn't here to guide its recovery. Replacing the capsules will be very difficult because there's only a 6-inch spacing in between the units. And apart from that, the people who own the capsules inherited it from the original buyers of the capsules, so they're not that attached to it. There's been a lot of back and forth with the developer wanting to demolish it and the architecture community wanting to preserve it because it's, you know, the most well-known building that came out of the metabolic movement. From what I've heard, what I've read, it's going to be demolished very, very soon. The capsules were not only used for the Nakagin Tower, Kurokawa also placed them in a design for a private residence called the Capsule House K. Here, the capsules are clad in corten steel and given specialized functions such as a kitchen, bedrooms, and a tea room, which are interconnected by a central reinforced concrete living space. With the site sitting on such a steep slope, the roof was used for parking and the entrance is beside it. The capsules are attached by the same high tension bolts as used for the Nakagin Tower and are cantilevered in the same way. The tea room follows a plan made by Kibori Enshu, one of Japan's greatest tea masters who lived in the 16th century. The 2.5 by 4 meter dimensions of the capsule are exactly the same as those of the traditional Japanese tea house, dictated by size of tatami mats. Now this design for me exudes peak creativity, right? Usually on a site like this, houses would be like ginormous mansions, but it's probably due to the size of the plot as well, but I do appreciate the small scale of this building. And yeah, now let's talk about Kiyonori Kikutake. He's known for the design of his own residence called the Skyhouse, which was built in 1958 in Tokyo. The main structure comprises of 10 by 10 meter concrete slab elevated by 4 concrete pillars situated on every side's central axis, which also supports the roof. The plan is kept open without any fixed elements for flexibility. Kitchen and bathroom units are placed on the periphery. Floor-to-ceiling glazed sliding doors provide continuous visual linkage to the exterior. It also enlarges the space by blurring the boundary between the interior and the balcony. The waffle grid floor plate serves as a joint element to accommodate future expansion. A bedroom and study unit was plugged into the grid later on for Kikutake's son and was removed when he moved out. Unlike Kurokawa's projects, the Skyhouse Residence went through multiple extensions to accommodate the changing structure of the family and the need for new spaces. In my opinion, this has got to be the most successful project incorporating metabolist principles that is successfully integrated into the surrounding context. It's the only building that's gone through a successful renewal and extension and also removal of certain parts, and yeah, it's still being used to this day by the architect and its family. Now let's talk about Kenzo Tange. You've probably heard of him before. He's like Japan's national architect. His projects include the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, the Kuwait Embassy, what else? The Tokyo Olympic Center, but we're not going to talk about those today. We are going to talk about his endeavors, his adventures into Metabolist architecture. Even though he's not part of the Metabolist group, he was influenced by their philosophies. The Shizuoka Broadcasting Center, built in 1967, was his first attempt at introducing Metabolist ideals into the urban fabric of Tokyo. The site was 189 meters squared, right beside a train station and an overhead train line, so the most efficient method was to build vertically. Similar to the Nakagin Capsule Tower, it has a reinforced concrete shaft placed at the center of the site. It's 7.7 meters in diameter and contains stairs, elevators, toilets, and a kitchen. A total of 13 individual offices were arranged in 5 groups of 2 or 3 and attached to the shaft. The capsules are 3.5 meter high. Some areas were left open in between them to allow for future expansion, which has yet to be realized. For the time being, they are being used as balconies by the office workers. I think it's a brilliant design, you know. Technological advancements has allowed us to create more space in the sky, and with such a small site, I think it's a job well done. Even though expansion has not occurred yet, keep in mind that these structures were designed to outlast the conventional building, which has an average lifespan of 60 to 100 years. So yeah, you can't say it's unsuccessful yet, because it could go several lifetimes before anything happens. The Yamanashi Press and Broadcasting Center was another project Tange worked on in the 1960s that incorporated Metabolist ideals. Located in Kofu, Japan, the city has around 100,000 residents, much smaller than Tokyo, and it lies in a mountainous region near Mount Fuji. It was designed for 3 media companies, a newspaper printing plant, a radio station, and a television studio. Although it looks visually complex, the building shares the same structural concept as the Shizuoka Broadcasting Center. Elevators, stairs, piping, equipment rooms, and sanitary rooms were grouped into 16 reinforced concrete cylindrical towers with a 5-meter diameter that serves as the structural framework of the whole building. Indication of possible future expansion is suggested by the voids in between the offices, the height variations of the concrete towers, and exposed beam joints on the periphery of the building. The vision that Tange had was that the generative system could grow and take over the whole town. Currently, the building stands alone like an alien spaceship within Kofu's nearly medieval urban texture, dominated by low-rise, tiled roof houses. So, is Metabolist architecture viable? In my opinion, it depends. I think that separating building components and grouping them based on their lifespan can prove to be an efficient solution for resource conservation. Currently, carbon emissions from the built environment sits around 38% of the global output. So if we're able to find a way to keep the entire structure of the building intact while only replacing those components that are in need of renewal, then we could reduce our carbon emissions of our sector. However, as we've come to realize from Kurokawa's projects, it's easier said than done. Only 30 years have passed since its construction and it started having water leaking issues. Naturally, the more places where water can collect in a building's envelope, chances are drainage issues will come up more often than usual. So if we want this to work, we gotta find a way to waterproof the joints where the capsules and the main structure meet. Among all the Metabolist projects that were put forward, projects that I talked about earlier were towards a smaller scale. They are also one of the few that were actually built. There are countless more projects of a greater scale that remain at schematic phase and never followed through. I couldn't find any hard evidence on why these projects were never built, but I've come to realize that architecture is not just influenced by the architect. It's also influenced by, economic, ethnographic, political circumstances, and many others. Ultimately, the relevance of the architecture style is predicated on its demand, right? So if it's efficient, if it's useful, it's functional, then people gradually adopt it. The best way to showcase its benefits is through small projects such as the Skyhouse Residence. Bigger projects of this sort usually stay in the schematic phase due to public reluctance. Of the 144 capsules of the Nakagin Tower, none of them had been replaced before. And for the broadcasting centers that Tange designed, None of them had gone through a process of extension, expansion. This goes to show that architecture cannot be forced on an individual. Architects at the end of the day are there to serve the people and not the other way around. Alright boys, I'm gonna wrap this up. It's getting dark. That's my 2 cents on Metabolist Architecture. I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on it, so leave a comment down below if you want to. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Thank you very much. And yeah, as always, stay safe. Cheers. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.